everyone. It's your girl, Nycci Nellis. Welcome to another Industry Night. This is a show where we go on a deep dive with the people that are shaping what's happening in our industry right now. And today's conversation feels especially timely. Now, there's a lot being talked about in hospitality at the moment, about leadership and culture and what happens behind the scenes, what kind of industry we actually want to build moving forward, right? Between the recent coverage around Noma and Pete Wells' latest piece in the New York Times examining the brigade system, there's a real moment of reflection happening, right? So when someone comes along who is actively trying to do things differently to build restaurants that are not just successful, but sustainable for the people inside them, I want to understand more. So, enter John Murray. He has nearly 2 decades of hospitality. He has gone from server to chief restaurant officer, and he's now co-founder of Noko Hospitality in Nashville, where he's behind two of the most talked about restaurants, I mean, pretty much in the country. So, but what makes John's work stand out isn't just the food that's being served or the accolades, right? It's the intention. It's a people over profit. Those are not my words, those are his. It's a philosophy, and it includes things like 4-day work weeks, therapy, travel stipends. It's a real investment in the people who make hospitality happen. And John's right here. So I'm so glad you're joining me today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be here.
Excellent. All right. So, John, let's start a little bit with you. I mean, you didn't start in restaurants, you started in music, right? I mean, Nashville, of all places. So, can we talk about your trajectory a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I waited tables and bartended throughout college and
Hmm.
then got out of college and ended up in the music business for about 5.5, 6 years. I
Okay.
toured with country and Christian artists, and then the universe does what the universe does, and I ended up back in hospitality.
And was there something about hospitality that pulled you? Was there something about the music business that you were like, I don't want to do this anymore? What was it?
I think, well, when I got out of hospitality in the restaurant, or, from college being in the restaurant business, I thought it was like a second rate job. Everybody
Mm,
always told me that I needed to get a real job. And so I ended up in music, and I love music just because I'm an emotional person. I'm all about feeling, and I felt like I could find feeling in music.
hmm
And then I realized after '08 that music business wasn't necessarily for me, and that at the end of the day, all I really wanted to do was take care of people, and
mm.
restaurants seemed the most organic, truest form to do that.
Well, that is where you can take care of people. And especially if you have what I call the hospitality chip. There are people who just love to entertain, love to serve, love to see people being happy. And not everybody has it. I think you either have it or you don't. When you started really taking the hospitality industry seriously as a career, what was that sort of light bulb moment for you?
I had, who's now a really good friend of mine, he's a partner in another restaurant group, had a conversation with me that said, "Hey man, I know this isn't what you want to do forever, but you should take pride in what you do." And
Hmm.
that conversation really resonated with me, and I started to lean into the guest experience more, serving, and I
Hmm.
fell in love with just making people's day a little bit better than it was before. And
Hmm.
and I'm something just clicked with me that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and so the rest is history. And yeah.
But was it, but being on the floor, being a server and moving up to admin, and management is totally different. So what what was it about each of those levels and what did you learn from that? Because then you were managing like how many restaurants? Like it was like a
28,
lot.
20,
Yeah,
yeah,
almost
28
30,
restaurants.
right? So what was that like?
I think at the end of the day, we're just in the people business.
Hmm.
And I think from creating an experience or making a guest's day better to making an employee's day better is where the shift happened for me. Going,
Hmm.
if ultimately the guest is going to have a great time, I've got to make sure that the employee has a great time, that they feel
Hmm.
valued, that they feel cared for. Because if they don't feel valued and they don't feel cared for, then how is the guest going to feel valued or cared for? So I think, as I've grown, it's really just about taking care of people and our
Hmm.
people being the first and foremost in the scheme of things.
Well, as you broke away to do your own thing with opening of Noko, um, what what did you want? What was your vision?
I think COVID taught us a lot. It was a very, very tough time. Um,
Hmm.
and I think I worked harder than I had ever worked in my career. I think there's probably a lot of us that would say that just because of the
I
challenges that we faced.
totally did. And I wasn't on the floor, but I mean, I will tell you that those first 4 weeks, I don't think I slept. I mean, I was on my computer all day. I was talking to people, my people who work for me. I mean, I feel like I was like this because my kids were home. So like there was no office anymore. I was like on my bed, like this. Like it was insane. It was an insane time.
It was. Yeah, I don't wish that on anybody ever again. But I learned a lot. And I think for me, it was like in those before when COVID right happened, there were probably like about a week of kind of going, what do we do? How do we reposition? And there was a lot of
Hmm.
times where I remember laying in the bed early in the morning, talking to the universe, talking to God, and slowing down to go, my nervous system rested. I was able to kind of just be again and going, man, there's more to life than just the grind. There's more to life than just having a successful restaurant.
Hmm.
And I knew that when we opened Noko, that I didn't want our people to experience what I had to experience. It used to be like an honor to work 70, 80 hours a week or to pull a double 5 days in a row, and what's the honor in that? I mean, we're killing ourselves. We're not present with our friends. I don't have children. You have children. We weren't present with our
Hmm.
friends, our kids, our family. It one day we're going to wake up and it's all going to be gone. And for what? To say that I
Hmm.
won a James Beard Award or that I have a successful restaurant, like that didn't matter. And so it was really just trying to rewrite what it looked like to work inside of a restaurant. Like, what were the
Hmm.
things that were necessary to happen to ensure that people wanted to stay in this business? This is hands down, bar none, the best business I've ever been in.
Hmm.
It's not easy, but after COVID, we had a mass exodus, and
Yes.
that wasn't just by coincidence. People think, oh, it's a weaker generation, Gen Z, millennials, all that. That's a bunch of BS. It
Hmm.
it's the age old time, or the thing for time and time from years and years and years ago. People complain about the generation below them. It had nothing to do with the people. It had everything to do with the environment that the people were in. And so it was trying to
I think
rewrite
you're
what it looked like. Yeah,
I think you're really onto something there. Listen, before the pandemic, and poor Maddie's probably heard this, my producer, so many times here, but before the pandemic in the DC region, um, we were really struggling for staffing. Staffing was already an issue. And it wasn't just that the kids didn't recognize what the hospitality industry could do for them as a career. They were aware that it was a career path. They just, like you said, they were like they wanted work-life balance. And I remember the first time I heard that phrase because I'm Gen X. I was like work-life balance. I was like,
sure,
who gets that?
right,
But now I'm kind of like, yeah, we should all have work-life balance. What do you get? You're 100%. What do I get at the end of the day if I'm, responding to an email or to a text message or to something at, 2 o'clock in the morning? Like, what does it get me other than no sleep, right?
right. Or your ego. For me, it was like I'm firing off emails at 2 in the morning or 5 in the morning to the same
Hmm.
person, and my ego was like, they must think that I'm just amazing because I'm working at 2 in the morning. For no one at the end of the day, no one really cares. No one's going to
Right.
remember that tomorrow.
So when you built NoCo and you brought your team together, Chef Junior, how did you gather people and how did you create a new environment?
Well, so I have two business partners, Chef Junior and then Wilson
Hmm.
Brannick. I had a
Okay.
dream that Wilson and I started a business and that we
Hmm.
revolutionized hospitality. And I know that sounds really, really cheesy. I will never forget it. Heading to Raleigh, North Carolina, I called him. It was almost like I was asking a girl out on a date. I said, hey, dude, I had a dream about you last night that we're supposed to start a business. Would you leave and come with me? And without hesitation, he was like, yes. So then the
Wow.
next piece of the puzzle was like, okay, well, neither of us cook. So who's going to
Hmm.
be the person? And then Junior exudes hospitality. He takes care of people at such a level that, like, I can't even comprehend it as a front of house person. But hospitality is not just front of house. Hospitality is back of house. Hospitality is all things. And so we sat down in a conference room at an apartment that a friend of mine managed that let us use it for free. And we put up on a big whiteboard, what is wrong with our industry? There's no
Mm.
paid time off. There's you work your birthdays, you work Christmas Eve, the day after Christmas. Um, Even if you could get paid time off, it's tough sometimes to afford to pay for a vacation. So we literally looked at all the friction points or all the problems that were being in the restaurant, whether you were a server or a dishwasher, a lead chef, or whatever it may be, and said, okay, how can we create things to be different? And we said, 1 week out of 365 days a year to have a vacation is not enough. So we said, okay, every 6 months, we're going to give you a week of paid vacation. If you're a salaried person, we're going to pay your salary. If you're a line cook, we're going to pay you whatever you average. You average 40 hours a week, we'll pay you for 40 hours a week. If you're a server and you average $1,500 a week in tips, we're going to match your $1,500 a week in tips. We feel like every 6 weeks or every 6 months, people deserve to take a week off. And then
Mm.
on top of that, I read Let My People Go Surfing by Yvonne Chouinard, who started Patagonia. And they
Hmm.
take 1% of their profits and they give it back to environmental charities to help, like the rainforests and things of that nature. And I said, well, what if we take that 1% and give it back to our people in the form of a travel stipend so that they can not only have a week paid off, but we can help pay for that vacation?
Wow.
And then I look at my life. I've been sober. It'll be 7 years in April.
Mm.
And I look at,
Congratulations.
thank you, I appreciate that. I would not be here
Mm.
today if it wasn't for that decision. But
Hmm.
therapy was a huge part of that. Therapy's not cheap. So
No.
we were able to find a company, insurance, that we pay the fee for, and our employees have access to therapists specializing in addiction, trauma, whatever it may be, and they can see that same therapist week after week after week, cost free to them.
Mm.
Um, Closed every Monday. We close Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, the day after Christmas. Even if you celebrate Christmas or you don't, it's a great time to slow down and be present with friends and family. I
Hmm.
just, this business is an amazing business. And for years and years and years, we have taken care of people, but we have not taken care of ourselves. And it's
Hmm.
time that that changes. And I think what's happening in our world right now, hopefully, is a catalyst that, like, we've overlooked it for far too long, and it's time for a change. And I don't think it's just our business. I think it's outside of our industry as well.
No, no, no. I mean, listen, it's all industries, right? All industries could do with a update, which it sounds like. I mean, you looked on that whiteboard, you saw the problems and said, this is our dream, right? To have all these things. My question to you is, how were you able to fund it? How were you able to make it work? Because I think that's the big question for everyone.
Well, I'm very fortunate. The company that I came from, Indigo Road, Steve Palmer, taught
Mhm.
us really well.
Okay.
He taught us how to be operators. So we started
Hmm.
with a financial plan of what we call a pro forma. We walked into a rent structure that was reasonable. We walked into menu pricing, the whole nine. We hired a PR and marketing firm, which most restaurants don't spend money on. And I understand when you look at a dollar sign, it's scary. But at the end of the day, Nycci, we just said, we're not going to compromise anything. We're going to do it this way. And if we go out of business, then so be it. We're going to go out of business. And we knew that we tried it from a just place. And
Okay.
the complete opposite happened. We
Hmm.
have been more successful than I have ever seen a restaurant be in my entire career. And I've been doing it for a while. And I don't say that from a place of arrogance or a place of look at me, but I still believe that if you lead with heart and you lead from the
Hmm.
right place and you work your ass off, that things happen the way they're supposed to
Hmm.
happen. And we're very fortunate. I feel extremely grateful, but it was a non-negotiable for us that we were going to do it this way. And if it didn't work,
Okay.
then oh well, it didn't work. We were going to owe our investors some money and figure out how to pay it off eventually one day, but it's worked.
Okay. So for people who haven't had the luxury of going to Nashville and checking out your two restaurants, can you tell us a little bit about sort of their setups and their vibes?
Sure, they're both neighborhood joints. They're in the dead center of East Nashville. We're embedded by tons of homes. Um,
Hmm.
Obviously we appeal to the tourists, but our bread and butter day in and day out are regulars. We have people that dine with us 3, 4 times a month that we know by name. We know their kids.
Mm.
Noko is just a comfort food Asian wood fired joint. We've got a big 5 foot wood fire hearth. We have tomahawk steaks, wood fired vegetables, market catches, chickens. We've got tuna crispy rice, crudos, carpaccios, all the things, but it's just a no frills. It's our chairs are from Target. We spent $75 a chair on them. We believe that if
Okay.
you created something that was just consistent, it's not revolutionary. We're not trying to win any awards. We just want happy guests, and
Hmm.
happy employees has led to happy guests and consistency. And
Right,
then
but that's also, but you also, I mean, you have good food. You know, people are coming in for the food, for the experience, for the whole thing. But then you went a step further and opened up your second place, Case and Noko, and that's an
Kase,
omakase. Oh, Kase, duh, it's an omakase.
all
Kase
good, dude.
and
It's all
sorry,
good.
duh, Kase and Noko because it's omakase. And you're able to do that for $75, which for an omakase is incredibly reasonable. What what was the experience like? Did that come from chef? Did that come from you and your business partner? Like, what was it about that you guys were like, I think we can do this?
We always wanted to do an omakase. I think the thing that
Okay,
always we were hesitant to do was the price point always scared us.
sure.
Um, and there is a restaurant in East Village in New York City. It is no frills. It was $60 for 13 courses, I think, 13 bites,
Wow.
and it was bite for bite one of the most consistent, tasty omakases that I've ever had. And it
Hmm.
was super reasonable price wise. And then I've eaten at Masa in New York City that's $1,000 a person. And
Right.
while that was super tasty, I didn't find the value proposition. And so trying to figure out how do you marry the $60 and the $1,000 experience and bring them together that the neighborhood, the average diner can come in, not break an arm and or spend an arm and a leg and still
Hmm.
have an amazing experience. So I think every time you open a restaurant, my goal is to get better, right?
Hmm.
And so we just wanted to elevate the bar and do something that was a sense of affordable luxury that it's still not cheap, but it's
Right.
not expensive in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
In
It's
that,
not $1,000 a person, right?
right,
Like, I
or
mean,
200 bucks a person or whatever.
exactly. No, I think that's one of the hardest things right now. I mean, I was in Nashville recently, but here up in DC, or whether you go to California, everywhere, like, it used to be like $100 per person, for dinner. And now it's well above that. For a couple to go out, does it have to be $250 for dinner, right? People are trying, especially on a casual night. You know what I mean? Like, special occasions, Saturday night, like everybody's going out for fun. It's a totally different vibe. But I think people are looking for that value, but they still want it to be good. They don't want it to lack in experience and taste. They want the both. And when it came to both of these restaurants and the way you and your partners had decided to create this sort of people over profit narrative, or model, if you will. How did you go about curating the people to join your team? Because to me, everybody has to be all in. Like, one of the things I always worry about when I'm talking with people in any industry is that, sometimes there's always, I call them a cancer. There's always that one person that likes to complain. Do you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like, they like to complain about something. And then all you need is one person to be like, yeah, and then now you have two people complaining. You know what I mean? So creating that environment where they see what you're doing and they're in it to win it with you. is a real accomplishment. So how did you go about finding the right people and presenting it to them in a way and keeping them there with you?
We haven't gotten it right every time,
Okay,
but
fair enough.
we try really really hard. Danny Meyer, the
Hmm.
51%, the emotional quality. There has not been one employee we've ever hired that hasn't been interviewed at a minimum of 2 times.
Okay.
And so the first we have a very intro phone call, 10-15 minutes, kind of make sure we're all on the same page, be respectful of their time. Then we meet them and we meet for about an hour and we ask them all the technical things. And then the second interview, you come back and we talk about 95% of it has nothing to do with work. Tell me about your brothers and sisters. What's your dog's name? What does your significant other do? Tell us about maybe a pivotal moment in your life that has shaped you into who you are today that maybe wasn't necessarily like a great bright spot in your life. And so we try to identify people that are vulnerable, that are
Hmm.
willing to admit when they're wrong. And then it's honestly just, I don't want to say teaching, but like coaching and living it. If I'm a butthole, or if
Hmm.
I'm arrogant, or if I don't do as I say, then no one else is going to do that. So
Hmm.
leadership starts at the very top.
Agreed.
And if I'm an asshole, then everybody else is probably going to be an asshole. If I'm
Hmm.
loving, if I'm nurturing, and listen, love doesn't always feel good. Sometimes love requires a direct conversation where you call somebody out or draw a
Hmm.
line in the sand. Um, man,
Sure.
I don't,
Reprimanding somebody or correcting somebody is not is part of life, right? We don't grow or learn unless, I mean, if I screw up, somebody has to tell me. Now, have I lost my temper before?
of course, sure, right.
Absolutely. But do I course correct that if I lose my temper and apologize for my lack of ability to control myself in that moment, still acknowledge the screw up, if you will, and say, listen, this is what you did. I lost my temper. That my part was wrong, but here's your part. And so let's fix this together, right? I mean, those open lines of communication are the way that everybody succeeds, don't you think?
100%. I mean, one of our values is forgiveness, and I've
Mm,
needed to be forgiven before. And just as someone has forgiven me, people deserve the right to be forgiven as well.
mm,
Yeah, I have overreacted. I'm not a screamer or yeller. I've never screamed. I've never yelled in the workplace,
mhm,
but I've maybe handled a situation the wrong way. Actually, I know I have, and I allow our people to challenge me to say, "Hey, I
mm,
didn't appreciate that." Um, how we did it, I don't know. One of the questions that I love the most is how do you receive feedback? Because I
mhm,
know that I would not be where I am today without a hell of a lot of it. And we're going to give you feedback, and we're going to give you feedback in a nurturing, loving manner. But like, how do you receive it? Because it is going to happen. Because no one
mhm.
gets better without feedback. It's like
Well,
going.
and nobody's perfect either,
No,
right?
of course not. It's like going to the gym. You hire a
Hmm.
personal instructor to tell you what you need to do better.
Right.
No one gets upset about that, right?
Hmm.
It's in the same idea, the same theory. So I don't know. I feel that we're very lucky. We've been very lucky as well.
So, with the people that you bring in, you go through all this interviewing and things like that, and I read that you have a 14.5% turnover rate, which is tiny compared to the rest of the industry. It's like 80% or something like that. Um, have other have other restaurants sort of looked at what you're doing and said, "Hey, dude, how are you doing this?" Like, are people looking to you for consulting or looking for ways to sort of have that conversation?
Yes, we FYI we don't consult. We are
Hmm.
100% focused on what we do. However, we are an open book. Um, you know, yes, Mark Bolches in Charleston, South Carolina, called me early on before he opened his restaurant. I was like, dude, how do you do this? And I was like, man,
Hmm.
walk into it. And he has, and he's the more successful he's become, the more things he's put in place. There's
But do
another
people
restaurant.
come and sort of stage with you, or do they hang out in your restaurant and kind of watch how it works? Do you know what I mean?
I wish that more people would, because this is a big statement. I feel very insecure saying it. However, I believe that if we don't speak things out loud, that they typically don't come true. And our goal is to change
Hmm.
hospitality forever. And what I mean by that is what it looks like to work inside of a restaurant. We can't do that alone. I don't want to do that alone. Wilson doesn't want to do that alone, nor does Junior. We,
Hmm.
dude, if someone called me today and said, "Hey, man, can you give me an hour? I want to figure out how you do this," 100%. Like, but no,
Hmm.
we've probably had 3 restaurateurs reach out to me to say, "Hey, what are you doing and how are you doing it?" I wish
That's
more would.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're really on to something. I've talked to Bird, do you know Birdies in
Yeah, I'm very
Austin?
familiar with them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, they too are looking to change things up. And then we have a restaurant team here. They used to be Tail Up Goat. They're opening up Rye Bunny. Jill and John,
I
they
watched
went to
that one. Yeah.
Birdie's. Yeah, like they were like, so I think there's a lot of people like you who are like, it doesn't have to be like the old days. And there is something better and brighter ahead. And if I can zoom out for a second, um, with all the reporting out there about the industry, I mentioned Pete Wells' articles today about the brigade system, which many finer dining rooms do use, but so do lots of restaurants. I mean, most people are trained on the brigade system from Escoffier. And I'm just sort of curious with the culture you're trying to create, how do you sort of zoom out, and I know the brigade system is in the kitchen, but it does leach out to everything, right? Because everything's seen as a hierarchy. How do you sort of zoom out and be like, this is our kitchen culture, we can still be effective and efficient without being I mean, abusive is one thing, but without being cruel, I guess, or without appreciating what everybody else does.
It's a really good question. I have never worked in a 3 Michelin star restaurant. I have never worked at that level. So for me to say, I know that that requires a whole different set of skill sets than I have, nor
Mhm.
will I probably ever have. Um, I, I think at the end of the
It's not
day,
just in a three Michelin star restaurant. If you go to a big ass hotel or a convention center, I mean, like lots of restaurants have a hierarchical system because that's how they learned. And it controls, it's a control center, it controls things.
sure. Well, here's the thing. I think if you have systems and processes in place, you don't have to be a dick to end up approving or achieving what you want. And
Hmm.
so, the way we speak to each other is so important. And yes, I can be firm, I can be curt, and I can be direct, and I don't have to be a dick doing that. I don't.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are. I've worked
Right.
in kitchens in the past where it's like, dude, just tell me to do it better. And here's the thing, if that person doesn't do it better, another conversation is required. And then
Mhm.
after a couple conversations, there's one of two things that are happening. Either they're not capable and maybe we need to move them to a different place or a different station, or they just don't care. And if they don't care, then they shouldn't be here. And that's ultimately at the end of the day on the person that hired them. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
No, I think it's not answering it, but you're providing me context, which I think is interesting. I think I'm going to title the show John Murray Says Don't Be a Dick. And I think we're going to do really well with that. I think it'll be really
I should
funny.
probably get some PR training so I don't use bad words. You know what I mean?
Don't be silly. I want to just hit a couple more things before we have to wrap up. You mentioned earlier, right, that you love the idea of giving right, like taking some of your profits and giving it to others. So you give 1% of your profits to the Nashville Children's Alliance. Why was that so important? And how do you become a part of the community? And not all restaurants feel the need to. And it's a business at the end of the day, so I don't know that they have to, but I feel like you give what you get, right? So what was it for you, especially when it came to, taking your profits and making sure you were making donations within the community?
Three pillars that we live off of: the way we take care of our people, the way we take care of our guests, and the way we take care of our community. So community was a non-negotiable for us as well. Um, for anybody that doesn't have a part of their business model, I think that they're missing a key aspect to being successful. We didn't do it because we thought it would make us successful. We did it because we wanted to have impact. Um, Nashville Children's Alliance specifically, we vetted a ton of people in Nashville. We wanted it to be hyper local. Nashville Children's Alliance helps children who've been sexually abused, severely physically abused, witnessed murders, crimes that are like traumatic. That's
Hmm.
a part of my story as a child. And I knew and it wasn't like we went out looking for that. It almost kind of found us. And when
Mm.
that happened, Wilson Jr. and I were like, these kids deserve an opportunity to heal. These kids deserve to have an opportunity to recover from these things that have happened to them. And I mean, kids are the future, right? As cliche as
Right.
that sounds, like, what bigger impact could you have than affecting young children that have experienced something so traumatic to become
Mm.
a better human? So
Hmm.
that was how Nashville Children's Alliance came along. But we knew from the very beginning that we wanted to give back to the community.
Well, I think, all these things you are doing, I bet a lot of people would initially roll their eyes, because it's a business, but you are finding ways to make it work. What, um, just as we wrap up here, what would you challenge operators, if we're listening to the show, other people in the industry, what would you challenge them to rethink in what they're doing, whether they're back of the house, front of the house, management, what would you challenge them to think about?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things that I would challenge our industry, but I think ultimately, if I got to choose one, stop looking at the dollar signs. Stop looking at what it's going to cost you. Every decision we make comes with at a cost, right?
Hmm.
And so stop going, well, I can't afford to do that. Well, maybe if your employees were happier and they had more time off and they were had a sustainable life, maybe your guest experience would be better. And maybe if your guest
Mm.
experience was better, maybe you'd be busier. Maybe, so I think stop looking at what it costs from an employee standpoint and start looking at what is it going to bring to the table. So, I mean, there's a whole other, we don't have enough time in the day for me to go on my rant about what I think other operators should be doing or changing.
Hmm. Well, I think that's a great place to start. I really appreciate your time today, and
Thanks for
I
having me
can't wait
on.
to get back to Nashville so I can come in. I don't think I could get a reservation last time, but now I know somebody, so I'll be calling
Whatever you
you.
need. Yeah, we got you. We got you.
Um, but it's really, really exciting to hear what you're doing. Like, because I get to talk to so many great people in our industry, it's so exciting to see what you're doing and how it's working and the success that you're having. Um, and I hope more people hear you and get inspired by you and try to integrate some of that into their own business models as well. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for giving us a voice and shining light on such a beautiful industry and the change that needs to happen. Thank you. Seriously.
Well, I appreciate that. All right. Tell everybody, please, where they can find you, where the restaurants are, where we can find you online, all the things.
Both restaurants in East Nashville. We have two more coming online later this year in Nashville as well. Best website to go to would be nocohospitality.com. And then my Instagram handle, I think, is the John Murray. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. I mean, this is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be having right now. Because at the end of the day, hospitality is about people, both the ones we serve and the ones who are doing the serving. Because the boss shouldn't be a dick, the server shouldn't be a dick, and quite frankly, the customer should not be a dick. Those are
Fair.
my words, not John's. So
Yes.
if we don't take if we don't take care of people inside our restaurants, the whole thing doesn't work. So what John and his team is building down in Nashville is so thoughtful, and it's successful, and it's human. It's amazing. It's exactly what the industry needs right now. So I want to thank all of you for joining me today on Industry Night with my amazing guest, John Murray. Everything you heard here today, you can find on the list, areyouwantit.com, the online zine that tells you everything happening in the DMV. Of course, you want to follow me at NYCCINELLIS on all the platforms, the Insta, the YouTube, the LinkedIn, the blah, blah, blah. I'm on all of them, but Insta is where you're going to see what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, and what I'm doing. I've done some great traveling lately. It's all on there. So thank you again to John. Thank you for tuning in today. Everybody, be safe out there, be smart, don't be a dick, and have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.